Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Joanna Goldfarb. I'm the Youth Services and Sustainability Innovation Consultant at the Ramsville Catskill Library System. Thank you for joining in today's SEAL 101 training. So today's training will be run by Kelsey Milner. Kelsey is the Resource Sharing and Cataloging Librarian at Southeastern New York Library Resources Council. In addition to coordinating the use of SEAL, which we will be learning more about today, she also processes interlibrary loan referrals on behalf of member libraries and manages Southeastern's special library catalog. So Kelsey, take it away.
Awesome. So I'm just going to start by sharing my screen. So let's see. Okay, so you guys should be seeing my PowerPoint now. Awesome. Hi everybody, and welcome to SEAL 101, our introductory SEAL training. As you might have seen from the event description, today's webinar covers all of the basics of using SEAL. And I want to start off by thanking everyone for taking time out of your day to attend this webinar. It's really great to see everyone, at least virtually, and be able to talk about one of my favorite things, interlibrary loan. So I do like to start this training off with a very brief PowerPoint. It's just about 5 minutes that answers some of the basic questions new users might have about SEAL. So things like how it works, who's involved, and how to deliver materials. I know that everyone is probably coming into this training with different levels of experience, so the PowerPoint helps to make sure that we're all on the same page. And then after the presentation, I will jump into SEAL and then start demonstrating some workflows. So I will be stopping periodically throughout the training to address any questions, so feel free to put them in the chat as they come up, or unmute yourself and then ask away when I stop. So I'm just going to change slides. So this is a brief roadmap of what I will be covering today. After the PowerPoint, I will be doing live demonstrations on things like creating your own SEAL account, searching, placing requests, lending items, and generating statistics. And afterwards, I'm going to touch briefly on our regional interlibrary loan code and procedures, which provide guidelines on borrowing and lending through SEAL. So I know it sounds like a lot, but I'm going to point you toward some resources such as our manual and our training videos, which can be really helpful if you need any reminders of anything that I go over today. So I like to start this training by sharing a little bit more about who Southeastern is and where we fit into the library landscape. So we are a membership organization serving libraries and other cultural institutions in the 8 counties that are listed at the right. We provide services to libraries of all types, public, academic, special, and school, and we are one of 9 similar library resources councils throughout the state. Each one has their own unique region. The Southeastern region is specifically comprised of 8 unique library systems, and you might come across these systems when you're using SEAL, so I just like to tell people about them. These include the 5 school library systems, Dutchess, Orange Ulster, Rockland, Sullivan, and Ulster. Then we have the 2 public library systems, Mid-Hudson and Ramsville Catskill. And then we have what we call the Southeastern system, which includes academic, hospital, and special libraries as members. We also have one out-of-region participant, the New York State Library, and the New York State Library is based in Albany, and they lend materials freely across the state as part of their mission. And they actually asked us if they could be a part of SEAL, and they are a really great resource for academic or state-specific resources. And they also give really long lending periods. It's like 3 months, so they can be a great lender. Right now, we have about 179 libraries participating in SEAL in total. So how does SEAL work? Our sort of tagline for how SEAL works is search and email, answer and loan. Users search the SEAL catalog, which pulls live item records from libraries across the region, and the image that you see on the top is a screenshot of our catalog. So once you locate a specific item, you can choose a potential lender from a list of participating SEAL libraries, and that's the form that you see on the right. An email will be generated to the library asking if they're able to loan the item, and if they can, they respond that they can fill it, and that's the form you see on the bottom, and then they send the item. SEAL also has some other useful features, which I'll touch on today, including a directory of participating libraries, the ability to update item statuses, a statistics tool, and then borrowing and lending request histories where you can see all the requests that you've placed and all the ones that you've received from other libraries. I also like to let people know what they can expect to get through SEAL. So There are a variety of items you can get through it, though most commonly it's used for book loans. You can also request some physical items like DVDs, CDs, and audiobooks, although some libraries do choose not to lend these due to their more delicate nature. Our directory of participating libraries has a list of the item types that each library is able to loan, and this is also something that you can determine for your own library as well. And then there are a few things that you can expect that you probably won't be able to get through SEAL. This includes ebooks, which aren't allowed to be lent due to vendor and license stipulations. Also, interlibrary loan in general just doesn't really have the infrastructure for lending ebooks, hopefully someday, but not yet. It might also be a challenge to receive very new and popular titles just because some libraries, if they something that's just been released, they decide to only lend it within their library for a set period of time. And then after a while, they kind of move to system holds and then through ILL. And so a few other things you probably won't be able to get: reference materials, archival materials, or special collections materials. So the last thing that I want to touch on before going into the demo is delivery. And delivery is really the backbone of interlibrary loan. And as RCLS libraries, you guys actually can use your courier to deliver to many other SEAL libraries. This includes libraries in the Mid-Hudson library system. The two system couriers meet twice a week to exchange materials. You can also use your courier when mailing to libraries that participate in a service called Empire Library Delivery, or ELD for short. ELD is a statewide delivery service that's managed collectively by the 9 library resources councils. And RCLS participates in ELD along with a lot of the other academic libraries in SEAL. This includes the New York State Library, Vassar College, and SUNY New Paltz, just to name a few. And I'll talk more about the process of using your courier for these deliveries as we go through a sample request. So all other deliveries in SEAL that you can't make with your courier, you would need to make using typical shipping methods like UPS or USPS, or FedEx. And so this will be the most common method that you need to use when delivering to and from school or special libraries. Okay, so before starting the demo, I just wanted to stop and see if there are any questions on what we've covered so far. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so you guys should be seeing SEAL now, if all went well. Okay, so I'm on the SEAL homepage. This is the address right here, seal.tinnylark.org. This search bar here can actually be used by anyone who comes to the page, including patrons or the general public. You will just need a request or an account to actually place a request. So I mentioned I was going to start from the very beginning with SEAL. So the first thing I'm going to do is show you how you can make your very own SEAL account. So don't stress if you can't remember each of these steps as you follow along. I'm going to point you to a tutorial video and our SEAL manual, which also explain the process step by step. And if you ever have any SEAL questions, you can also call or email me and I'd be happy to walk you through the process. Okay, so first I need to log out. So the first step, if you want to make an account, is to click Staff Login and then Create New Account. Users can make an individual account with their personal information, and actually multiple people at your library can have their own separate accounts, and they'll all be linked together under the umbrella of your library. So you don't have to share accounts. So you'll see a section here for registration code. This is just how we keep track of new accounts and how we make sure that everyone who signs up has received some training. So this year's code is SEAL 2022. So after entering the user or the registration code, you would need to select a username. And this is totally up to you. One recommendation is to use your first initial and last name or your email address if it's unique to you. Just has to be something that you'll remember because this is what you use to log into your account. So then you would fill in the rest of your contact information, including your name, email, institution, work address, and phone number. You can also choose to include your library's OCLC or Library of Congress codes, only if you happen to know them. It's totally optional. We'll locate those if you don't know what they are. So here you can see a list of those different library systems that I touched on earlier. So you would choose your library system from the drop-down menu. And then once you finished filling in your account information, we have some terms and conditions of use for participating in SEAL. So as I mentioned, we have an interlibrary loan code and procedures. These documents provide best practices on things like renewals, due dates, managing lost or damaged items, and then later in the training, I'll show you where you can find copies of these documents. So among other things, the terms touch on what I kind of consider to be the golden rule of interlibrary loan, which is that borrowing libraries are responsible for any materials they request from the minute it leaves their shelf to the minute that it's placed back on it. So if these terms are all agreeable to you, you would click accept terms and conditions and then create new account. And so after you've submitted your account, you'll receive an email in a day or two from the address noc@cinelark.org confirming your account, and will also include a link for you to set your password. And then once you have your login information, the fun really starts because you can place and request and receive requests in Seal. Okay, so to log in, initially click Staff Login. If you ever forget or need to reset your password, you can hit Request New Password. This will generate a link to the email that's on file for you, allowing you to reset your password. So I'm just going to go ahead and log in. Once you log into Seal, your account will display with your institution's information, and then there's a few key options. So I'm just going to show you a few of these options before we demonstrate placing a request. The first thing that I want to touch on here is the library lending profile. So this is where you can record all of your library's lending preferences as well as your contact information. So it is important to try and keep this information as up to date as possible. So the email that's in this lending profile is where correspondence relating to Seal requests will be sent. So if someone places an ILL request to your library, this is where that lending message will go. So some people kind of choose different ways to manage this. Some choose to create a shared email. So especially if they have multiple Seal users at one library. So at Southeastern, for example, we use a Google group with a shared email address and it gets forwarded to other people. You can also add multiple emails. If you have several people that you want to receive these emails, you can just put a semicolon between each email to separate it. The lending profile is also where you can suspend lending temporarily if your library is ever closed or you're otherwise unable to address ILL requests for a certain period of time. So when lending is on and you're able to receive requests, this option will be set to no, and you can turn off lending by changing this to yes. So once it's set to yes, you won't receive any ILL request, and you can also determine the date that you want your account to become active again, and it'll automatically update. So you can just click in this box and then choose the date. So if you don't pick a date, your account will automatically become active again after 7 days. Your account is also where you can indicate the types of materials that you're able to loan. So if you specify that you can't loan a particular item type, your library will be removed as an option when placing that request. So if I said Southeastern can't loan print books, which is true because we don't have a collection, I could put no and then click submit, and that'll update my profile, and so I won't receive any requests for print books. And it's pretty cool because there's this little, almost like a timestamp at the bottom of your lending profile, so you can see the last time that it was updated and who updated it. So if you ever need to change your personal information, like the email that's associated with your Seal account or your password, you can actually do so by hitting this little edit button, and it'll open up a screen where you can make those changes. And then there's a save at the bottom of the page. So that's an easy way to change your email and password as well. So your account is also where you can see both the interlibrary loan requests that you've placed and the ones that you've received from other libraries. So if you click on See All Requests Placed by your library, it'll take you to a chronological listing of all the borrowing requests that you've placed. And it goes chronologically, so it starts with the most recent one. Each request includes a unique ILL number, as well as the bibliographic information of the book, the lending destination, and the due date and shipping method for the item. There's also an action tab on this far right-hand side where you can update the status of items. Updating your seal item status isn't mandatory, but it can be very helpful for both libraries and an ILL transaction. So before we added these status updates, I know people would find it a little jarring sometimes because they would send off a book and wouldn't know what happened to it. So this just gives both people in the transaction a sense of where their item is at all times, and it's kind of a way to communicate. So borrowers, in terms of status updates, they can cancel requests. They can receive items when they show up at their library. They can also request renewals, and they can return items using these options. The most recent action that was performed will show up under this status bar with a timestamp and the most recent action that was made. So this item was received by me because it's a fake request, but it was received on May 13th. So you can locate a specific request by searching the ILL number. It's assigned in the search bar. You can also search by the other library in your transaction. There's some options along the top of the screen where you can sort your request history by its current status. So if I wanted to see only the items that I had received, I could click Received, Update, and it'll just show me the one that has that action addressed or linked to it. So you can also change how far back you want to see for your request. The default is 90 days, but you can also change it to all days. So see, if you change that, you'll see all of the requests that you have ever received. The process is really similar if you want to see the other side of the equation, so the lending requests that you've gotten from other libraries. So you would just click See Our Request Received by your library, and the page looks really similar. You can sort and search for requests in the same way, and you can see here that my action options are different. So lenders can use this to fill or decline requests. They can also edit due dates. I don't have that one as an option here, but once the borrowing library has received an item, then the lender can go in and edit the due date for it. Lenders can also approve and deny renewals from these, and they can check items back in once they have been returned by the borrowing library. So one other thing that I wanted to show you quickly is the SEAL directory. This directory lists all of the participating SEAL libraries in alphabetical order. So to find a specific location, you can search by library. You can also narrow down by specific library system. So this can be really useful if you ever need to double check whether a specific library is in your system or not. So let's just say, for example, I needed to contact Southeastern. I could type Sinulurk. Each entry displays the address, phone number, and email of the organization. And these emails are actually only visible once you're logged into your SEAL account. So people, just the general public coming to the SEAL website, they don't see these emails. You can also see what types of materials a library is lending by clicking Show Loaning Options. And you can also see whether or not they're currently accepting requests. And this information is drawn directly from your library lending profile. So if you updated it and said, I can't lend right now, this would automatically change to no. Okay, so I just wanted to pause briefly and see if there are any questions. I'm just going to take a sip of water for a second. I did a webinar once where I had a very squeaky water bottle, and during all the pauses, you could just hear it squeaking and it sounded like a hamster wheel. So I got a quieter one, hopefully this time. Okay, so are there any questions? Okay, so I'm just going to switch gears a little bit and then talk about the SEAL catalog. So just going to go back to this homepage. So I really love talking about the SEAL catalog. Kind of nerdy about cataloging and things like that, but so hopefully you guys also find it to be a cool resource. So the SEAL catalog searches over 400 individual libraries across the southeastern region, and it actually serves two distinct purposes. It acts both as a general regional catalog for the area, kind of like WorldCat, and also as the interlibrary loan catalog specifically for SEAL. So this is why you might see some libraries in the catalog that aren't actively participating in interlibrary loan. Since the catalog is serving this dual purpose, we've added some search categories to make it easier to get to ILL materials. So the default search is now all lenders, which I would stick with if I wanted to do a search for an item to get through ILL. But you can also narrow down your search by a specific library type. So say you know that you wanted to get something from the New York State Library, or you wanted to target academic library lenders, you could change that. um, Make sure I change that back for my test searches. So the catalog works through a protocol called Z39.50. So basically when you enter a search string, the catalog performs a live search within other libraries' catalogs to pull matching records based on your search. The system will then automatically overlay all the matching records, which allows you to see a list of each library that owns it. So in the search bar, you can use a variety of elements, including title, author, ISBN, or keywords. You can do both simple queries, and Seal also has the capabilities for managing more complex queries using Boolean operators, so and, or, not. You can also use quotation marks and parentheses. This particular training is just going to touch on simple searches and then using the advanced search tool. I do have a recording of a more advanced kind of webinar that was specifically about the Seal catalog, so I can show you where that's linked if anyone's interested in kind of hearing more about how the catalog works. So I just wanted to show you a few searching examples to demonstrate how the catalog works and then how you can narrow down searches if needed. In items, ISBN is probably your quickest way to locate a needed material if you have it or if you're looking for a specific edition. But if your item has a relatively unique title or a lengthy subtitle, you can also usually get away with a simple title search. So I'm going to try an example of a library themed book called Dewey, the Small Town Library Cat Who Touched the World. Okay, so when I do this search, the catalog is going to look at record titles as well as subject headings and note fields of records to come up with a potential match. So this one was successful. The book I was searching for was one of my first hits. And you can see that the catalog has tried to separate each of the results by item type. So we have an audiobook, we have a large print edition right here. However, because the catalog is looking at all these different parts of a record, sometimes an item title alone can be too broad. This is especially true if it's a single word or just not a particularly unique title. So one of my favorite examples to demonstrate this is from Ellie Smith, who wrote a series of books with titles based on the seasons. So if we were to try her most recent one, Summer, we get thousands of hits back. So we're at 60,000 records, and the catalog is still kind of plugging away. So it's just bringing in way too many hits on the word summer from not only just the title, but also the summary, notes, subject headings. So there's a few ways that we can narrow these down. One of my favorite Seal hacks when I'm kind of short on time or feeling a little lazy is to just combine different keywords. The Seal search automatically puts an and between every search term, so you can really easily narrow down results by using multiple terms. That's why the titles with the really long subtitles work well to drill down your results. I like to try combining the title and the author, so something like Summer Smith. Clearly I've tried this one before. So you're basically telling the catalog to only return results with these three words. So when we try it out, you can see it did help quite a bit. You can also see that where it's bringing in things on the summary, because here we have Ellie Smith. We also have Summer from, I believe, the summary of the record. So this particular search would also be a really good candidate for advanced search, which is located at the top right hand of the search screen. Advanced search is really great because it allows users to create an even more specific request by creating and formatting complex queries. So you can search multiple terms at once, including title, keywords, author, subject, and ISBN. So I'm just going to try searching using the complete title and then the author. Summer. And you can see that as oops, that one didn't work. Okay, so as I type, the query appears at the bottom of the page. And this is helpful because you can actually see what the system is searching for. And it's indicating to only look at the title field using this TI equals, only to look at the author with the AU equals. And you can actually enter complex search strings like this without coming to advanced search. But a lot of times I find that it's easier to get the formatting right by coming directly here. Okay, so let's test out this search. Okay, so this search was pretty effective. All my search results are the correct items. And oh, sorry, I lost my space. Okay, so this search was a lot more effective than kind of the previous ones we had tried. So advanced search is a really great option if you need to just kind of quickly get down to what you're looking for. So now I'd just like to talk about how to navigate the the SEAL search results page. So at the top of the page, you see options for help, the advanced search, and then the search history. So clicking help brings you to a page that talks about how to construct searches. So it gives you some tips on using some of those Boolean operators that I mentioned, and also I call them field limiters. I don't actually know what they're called, but indicating what part of the record that you want to search. Clicking search history will list all of the previous search strings that you tried. So if you ever wanted to try one of those again, you could just click on it. So I'm going to try my summer search again. There's also options here where you can sort by relevance, title, and then date of the material. On the left-hand side, we have some facets. So you can narrow down your search further by format, source, and then we also have subject and author, and these both appear as word clouds. So the bigger the word, the more often it appears in the record. And if you narrow down by a facet, it'll change the search string that's visible under the search bar. So now that I've clicked books, format has a highlighted all in the word books. And if I ever wanted to move backwards and search again without limiting by format, I could hit this highlighted all. So these icons all indicate formats of items. Once you get requests, you can also hover your mouse and it'll display the libraries that actually have an item. If you click on the title of the item, you can actually see the bibliographic information on the book and then the sources that you have to choose from. You can also see the current availability status at libraries, and you might notice that it actually looks different from library to library, and that's just because every single library catalog has its kind of own way of structuring these searches. So sometimes it might say on shelf, sometimes it might just be this availability dash. So from here you can actually links to a library's individual catalog. So if you want to see the record in the library's catalog, you can click on that. In some instances, you can actually see the MARC record as well. And that has all the publication details of a book, which can be useful if you ever need to verify an item. Okay, so now I would like to kind of switch gears and talk about how to place a request in SEAL, but I just wanted to check first and see if anyone had any questions about searching, about the SEAL catalog, or anything else that we've covered so far. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to the SEAL homepage. So now I'd like to talk about the requesting process for materials. For this, I'd like to use a scenario. So let's just say, for example, I have a patron who is very interested in the science of motivation, and they want to read the book Drive, The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us by Daniel Pink. This is Southeastern's favorite test book. You might have noticed in my request histories, that was the only book that was there. In this scenario, I would check my library first, and then I would move on to my library system. And if I found that the book was not available at either of those, I could try searching in SEAL. So I'm just going to do a search on the full title, Drive. So once you find the book, you have two options. You can click request right from here, and this will bring you to the request page. You can also click title if you want to verify anything about the book, and then you can click the request button from within here. Both will take you to the same place. So if you're not logged in at this point, you would be prompted to log in, and this is where kind of the general public and people who don't have SEAL accounts, where they would kind of hit that login screen. So they can do all of those things in the catalog that I just demonstrated. So the request form will display all of your information. I usually just tell people to kind of double check this, make sure that everything looks accurate. So we have a need by date option if you have an item that's a rush or something that, or it's not a rush and you have a long, kind of a long term, that can be helpful to the lending library to let them know, what kind of scope, um, what kind of time span that you're looking for. But totally optional to fill that in. We also have an optional note fields. So this can be a way to communicate anything particular to the lending library. Some people use this note fields to record patrons so they can kind of keep a reminder of who placed the requests. We do ask that if you use this to record a patron to avoid using any identifiable information, just for privacy reasons. We just don't want patron names kind of flying back and forth in emails. So many people will use their library card barcodes as a way to kind of preserve patron anonymity. It's a tough word to say. So these notes will only be able to be seen by you and then the lending library. And also me, but I don't really look at people's notes. So since we're requesting a print book, I would hit no for is this a request for an article? If you were trying to request an article, you would hit yes, and it would open up all of the necessary citation fields that you would have. So the next step is to choose a lender for your item. This system doesn't select an item or a lender automatically. You would have to decide on a good library to request from. One easy way to do this is to double check the status of an item. So when you open up the drop-down menu, just make sure the availability says checked in, available, on shelf, or something similar. And if it has a date, it says checked out, in library use only, or something like that, it's probably not going to be available to loan. If you ever try to open this drop-down menu and nothing appears, it just means that no participating libraries in SEAL have that particular item available for interlibrary loan. So once you've chosen your library, click Submit. An email will be automatically sent to the lender requesting this item, and then you will receive a copy of that email, and I can actually show you what that looks like. So this right here, this image, this is what that email you look like would receive. It includes the bibliographic information of the book. It also includes a link where you can cancel the request if needed. And this is also something you can do from within your SEAL account if you find patron doesn't need an item anymore, or for whatever reason you need to cancel your request. You can find this by heading back to your borrowing request profile, so see all requests placed by your library, and this cancel option will appear right here. So at this point in our scenario, we would have to wait until we heard back from the lender to see if they were willing to lend the request or the requested item. So they have 5 business days to respond, and then after 3 days, they will be sent a reminder email, just kind of letting them know, hey, you have this request. Are you able to send it? So if they don't respond within 5 days, the request will expire, and then you'll need to resubmit it to a different library. So for our example, let's say the library was able to lend the item. If they say yes, you would receive a confirmation email letting you know that they could send it, and it also will provide the shipping method and the contact email of the lending library. And I have an example of what that one looks like as well. So this is what that email you would get looks like. I can probably zoom in a little bit. So just list all that particular information that you need along with the email. So if you ever do need to contact the other library in your transaction for any reason, don't respond to the emails that you get from the SEAL system. These are just automated messages. So if you respond, they'll get sent back to me. And I don't mind receiving your emails. I just want to make sure that they get sent to the right place. And usually it's not a big deal because I'll just kind of forward them along, but I just like to let people know. So at this point, you would need to wait for the item to show up. This can usually take a week or two, kind of depending on delivery and things like that. And so then once it does arrive, you can check it out to your patron from your ILS, which is just kind of a way of keeping track of the item at your own library. People have different methods for doing this. I think the common method is to create a brief item record for the item, for the material, and then check it out to your patron there. But your method might vary kind of depending on the capabilities of your particular library system. So as I mentioned, you have the capability to kind of keep track of an item in SEAL as well. So this is how you can kind of communicate to the lender, letting them know that their item arrived. So if you ever got a book and you wanted to let the lender know that it was here, you could click Received Item. And we have this kind of second, we had a few people who were accidentally receiving items that hadn't shown up. So we just have this kind of second button. Are you sure? Yep. And then this will update the status to received. So if your patron ever needs more time with an item, you can also request a renewal from within Seal. So once you click received item, two new status options will appear: request a renewal and then return item. So if you need more time, you can click request a renewal, and then this will open up a notes form, which is totally optional. Some people choose this to just kind of explain why they need a renewal. So you could say like, oh, patron needs more time or something like that. But you don't have to necessarily provide an explanation. It's just kind of a way of communicating with the other person in the transaction. So if this will generate an email to the lender asking them if you can have more time, and if they agree, an email will be sent back to you with the new due date. You can also always email the lending library directly to ask for renewal using that email that's in the Seal or the Seal directory. And then, so you will receive a reminder email from the Seal system when your due date is approaching. And so let's just say that, for example, our patron has returned the book back to our library. So now we would need to send it back. So we can click return item. A drop-down menu will appear with options for delivery methods, and this also has a notes field. Again, so this is, some people choose to record additional information about when they sent it back or what method they use. So we could say like courier, what's today's date? May 25th, something like that. So a lot of times the way that an item was sent to you is a good indicator of the method that you can use to return it. But this is also a really good point to kind of show you where you can go for delivery help if you ever are unsure of what method that you should use. So if you head to the bottom of the Seal page, there's actually a link to training resources. So I'm just going to open this up. And there's a delivery page here, which has a step-by-step process for trying to figure out which method you can use. So as I mentioned, you can use your courier for items going to Mid-Hudson or for libraries in ELD, and RCLS has slips available to indicate which type of delivery it is, Seal versus ELD. The Seal slips are blue and say Seal, while the ELD items use a green routing slip that says ELD. And I believe these different colors just help the courier to kind of sort the items easier. And I'm pretty sure you can get these slips, or at least the paper, from RCLS. So your first step is to determine whether they're an ELD library or a Mid-Hudson library, because those libraries you can use your courier for. So if you scroll up to the ELD section, you'll actually see a list of all the ELD libraries that are also participating in Seal, and I do try to keep this list as up to date as possible. And then you can also check to see if they're a Mid-Hudson library by searching the Seal directory. There's also a linked list for all of the Mid-Hudson libraries here. And so if they weren't a Mid-Hudson library or an ELD library, in that case, you would need to use US Mail, UPS, or FedEx to deliver the item. And we don't have a specific required vendor for Seal. It's really kind of up to your library and what works best for you. Some libraries have kind of pre-existing relationships with a particular delivery vendors. And there's kind of pros and cons to different services. So if you ever encounter any kind of delivery question, you can always ask me, and I'll try to help as best as I can. And I know delivery can be kind of, it's the most important part of ILL, but it also can be the most challenging. So I'm always here for if you ever have any questions. Okay, so back to our items. So let's say for this example, we can use the RCLS courier. So then we would click submit. So now the lender will be able to check their status and see that their item is on its way back to them. So that's kind of the borrowing perspective of the ILL transaction. So I do want to just kind of switch perspectives and think about it from the lender's point of view. But I just wanted to check and see if there were any questions.
Hi, how you doing?
Oh, good.
I have a quick question on the MLS ones. You're saying they go back by US mail as opposed to the courier?
Oh, no, sorry. The Mid-Hudson, you can use your courier for those.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, because they meet twice a week and they actually exchange those. So it's really just usually school libraries. We don't really have too many special libraries, but yeah, so mostly school libraries you have to use UPS, US Mail.
Okay, so the instruction on the slip, the MLS slip, I'm putting in the return item. Do I indicate RCLS on that also? And then the loaning library's name? What's the best way to write that?
Oh, on the RCLS slip?
Yeah, because I have MLS slips, I have the ELD slips, all these separate slips, but if it's going through RCLS Courier, am I choosing that as the return method? Or am I choosing Mid-Hudson?
Oh, you would choose RCLS.
Okay, great, thank you.
I have a question.
Oh, sure.
I borrowed something from Dutchess Community College
Hmm.
and it says Empire Library System
Hmm.
Courier. So I send it back to RCLS and then to the community college.
Hmm.
And do I use a blue slip or?
Yeah, what did I, blue slip? Yeah, you would use the Empire Library delivery slip for that. So I believe, um, I'm not as well versed on the process just because it's kind of more of an RCLS thing, but my understanding is that they'll go back to RCLS headquarters and then they'll kind of package it and then ship it through ELD. So yeah, you would just use the ELD slip and that'll let them know that it's an Empire Library delivery item.
What slip is that again?
Um, I actually don't have, I'm not sure. I believe it says ELD. Um, and I was
If
told that
you
those are green.
if you contact either Patty or Gretchen in our ILL department, they can give you more specifics and let you know how you can get the appropriate color slip, because there are a lot of
Thank you.
different color slips.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of switch gears and think about things as the lender. So in this hypothetical situation, you're the library who has Drive and a borrowing library has placed a request to your library. So once this request has been placed, you'll receive an email that gives you an option to lend it. And so we do just ask that you always indicate whether or not you can fill a request, because that'll just let the borrowing library know that, whether or not they can expect to receive it. So I'm going to show you an example of what that email looks like. Very similar to the one that borrowers receive. And then there's the linked options where you can decide whether or not to fill the request or indicate that you can't fill it. So this is also something you can respond to from within your account. So if you had to see all requests received by your library, and you can also respond to it here. So the first step would be to just determine whether this is an item you can actually loan. If you decide that you can't lend it or it's not available, you can select not fill. This will bring you to a screen that asks you why you can't lend the item. So this information can be useful for the borrowing library as they continue to try and find a lender. So for example, indicating that an item is currently checked out will let them know that you have it, and they might be able to request it at a later date and time. So you would click, if you are able to lend it, you would click fill. And again, there's the option to put any notes that you might need to give the borrower. So I might say like sent via Empire Library Delivery 525, but again, the notes are just totally optional. There's also a drop-down menu to select the shipping method, and you can also select a due date for the item here. So I'm going to try and provide a due date 6 weeks from now, if I can do the math. 1, 2, 3, 6. So due dates are completely up to lending libraries to decide. However, I do kind of like to remind people when thinking about due dates to keep in mind the length of delivery. So sometimes this can take up to a week or two. And we have been seeing with recently delivery times are taking a little longer, especially using some of those couriers, so like US mail and things like that. So I typically recommend a minimum of 5 weeks for a lending period if possible. But again, it's totally up to the lending library. That's something that you get to decide how long you're willing to lend your material up. So you would click submit once you've finished filling everything out. And sealed library methods for checking out items in your ILS can also vary by library's individual procedures. I think the most common method is to add the borrowing library as an ILL patron in your ILS system and then check the item out to them there. And I think a lot of the libraries participating in SEAL are already in the RCLS catalog as patrons. So in many instances, you should be able to search the library name and then check the item out to them there. So at this point in the transaction, you would mail the item off to its destination. And there are also a few update options on the lender side of the transaction that I'd just like to really quickly go over. So as I mentioned before, you can see the current status of an item by checking this status bar. So this is also where you can approve any renewal requests that you receive. So you'll actually get an email from the system if someone places a request for a renewal, and I can show you what that email looks like too. So similar to the email that you get for filling the request, you can actually approve or deny the renewal right from within your email, but you can also do it from within your SEAL account. So if you are able to approve the renewal, you can just click approve and then put in the new due date, and then the borrowing library will receive an email letting them know what that new due date is. And then once you receive an ILL material back from the borrowing library, you can also update the status in SEAL as well as your ILS. So you could check the item back in. And this will let the borrowing library know that you've received the item without any issues and that it's been checked back in. So this would complete kind of the lending side of the SEAL transaction. Oops. I didn't mean to get back on the screen. Okay, so wait, I see something in the chat. So, oh, that's a really good question. So is the due date when the item should arrive at the lending library or when the patron should return to their home library? This is actually really interesting because I mentioned we have that code in the procedures that touch on things like due dates and renewals. And the code was actually agreed on by every system that participates in SEAL. So everyone kind of agrees to follow those rules. And according to our code, due date is actually when an item is due back at the borrowing library. So in theory, an item isn't technically overdue at the lending library if it's past the initial due date that you set it. And I know that that's kind of something that people don't always know, because sometimes I know people will give their patron a due date that's previous to when their actual due date is to account for more time for delivery. But per our code, due date is when it's supposed to be checked in at the borrowing library. And that code is like something that everyone kind of agrees to when they make a SEAL account. So that's a really good question. Thank you. So there's just one last thing that I wanted to show you in SEAL before showing you kind of where you can find those code and procedures that I just mentioned, and also some of our other training resources. So the last thing I want to show you is how you can generate data on your borrowing and lending activity. So sometimes you have to report statistics back to your library system, or sorry, I can't talk, possibly to like administrators at your library. So SEAL has a really easy tool for how to generate data. So let's say I wanted to know how many items that I borrowed. I could click link to library borrower stats, and you basically just enter date range for the items where you want to get data on, and then click submit. It provides raw numbers and then percentages on the total number of requests received, as well as the numbers filled, not filled, canceled, expired, etc. And then there's also a breakdown of requests that will tell you which library systems you actually placed requests to. So say you wanted to see how often you were placing requests to Mid-Hudson or to an academic library, this will kind of break that down. It also breaks it down further by item type. I don't have many groups listed for my example because I've only created and filled fake requests, but you might see kind of a combination of different libraries in yours. So this can be a really helpful tool if you ever want to keep track of trends in your activities, or you need to report on your SEAL usage. And then it's the same tool for the, oh no, I've really gone. It's the same tool for generating your lending statistics. You kind of just enter a date range and it'll display the data. And your account also has a feedback button. So if you ever encounter an issue in Seal, you can click on this and it'll open up an email that actually sends a message to me and then Zach, who is our systems manager at Southeastern, who kind of designed this whole website. So you can also always just call me or email me. This will kind of just go to my email anyway. So, but if you ever in Seal and you encounter an issue and you want to make sure you don't forget it, you can just use this feedback form. Oh, okay. So that's it for the demonstration. I just have one more thing to show you really quick, and that's the Seal LibGuide. Okay, so as I mentioned before, click training resources. This will bring you to our LibGuide. So we have a Seal manual. We also have some short training videos, and these cover a lot of the processes that I touched on today. So creating an account, managing requests, things like that. This is also where I have some of those advanced searching videos. So like this one kind of goes exploring the Seal catalog. And I am hoping to do this webinar again at some point in the near future. Oh no, I've angered my computer. Okay, so we also have an FAQ. We have a newsletter, so I send out a Seal newsletter every month. So if you're interested in receiving that email, you can sign up right here. And then I also have an archive where I just post what was in each newsletter. And so the last thing I want to show you is additional tools, and this is where you can find those code and procedures. So they can be really helpful for solving any kind of tricky issues that come up. And like I said, they touch on things like due dates, renewals, lending periods. They also touch on what to do when a book item is lost or it doesn't make it through delivery or that it gets damaged by the patron. So this kind of provides best practices on those types of things. And it's renewed every year or reviewed every year by Southeastern's ILL committee. So we try to make sure that everything is up to date. So this is the code and we base it on the ALA Interlibrary Loan Code. So it kind of breaks down responsibilities for borrowing libraries and responsibilities for lending libraries. And it's really helpful because it has explanations for why things are the way they are. So it kind of gives you a little more insight into why you might do something a certain way. So these are a really good resource to use when using Seal. And also if you ever have a weird issue or any kind of question, you can always just reach out to me and I'll try to help. And I love talking about interlibrary loans, so always happy to kind of chat with people. And then this page just has a few other resources too, some links to our other LibGuides, and also this kind of breaks down the status updates that I talked about and how they work with each other. And then we have a few other things here too. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and just check to see if anyone has any questions in these last few minutes.
I'm sorry if I missed this. I'm just wondering, what's a typical wait period for an item?
A wait period? Oh, for it to arrive through delivery?
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because it can vary really widely because just the way that the couriers are set up, sometimes it can depend on what day of the week you put it in the courier. So if you happen to put it in the mail, say the day before it's going to meet with the other courier, you could get it within a few days. But other times, if the timing isn't great, it can take up to a week. And I have been hearing people say that it's been taking a little longer recently, so sometimes up to 2 weeks. So it can really just, it's kind of all over the place at times. But usually you can expect a week or two.
A quick question, when receiving an item or a request from another library, the two places that you can state that you are able to fulfill a request, do you have to do both? Or is one by email and the other one on the Seal page? I've been duplicating to make sure that someone is aware that I'm fulfilling a request, but I don't know if I'm overdoing it by doing it twice.
Oh yeah, you should be able to do either or. So if you wanted to, it'll bring you to the same place, so you can just do it right from your email. So yeah, you don't have to do it in both places.
If I do it in the email first and then I refer to the seal page, it doesn't show that I've responded. So I
Oh,
was,
really? It doesn't? Oh, that's weird.
yeah.
Okay. I'm going to take a note of that because that shouldn't be happening. In theory, if you should
I'm
be
just
able,
doubling up to make sure I did it
yeah.
right.
Uh-huh.
I noticed that too with filling requests that it asks, like, it doesn't show up if you click yes in the email and then you go to your list. Like, I noticed that also.
Yeah,
Oh, that's really helpful to know. I'll let Zach know about that. And
great.
can-
Thanks.
Thank you. It's always good to hear when things are going wrong because then we can we can kind of address it and make sure it doesn't keep happening. So I'll touch base with him about that. Thank you. Any other questions? And also, like I said, if you encounter any issues or have any further questions, you can just send me an email. I'll put my email into the chat too. Well, thanks everybody for being here today. It was really great to see you guys had really great questions.
Thank you, Kelsey. Just a quick reminder before everyone logs off. I will send out an email when the recording for this program is ready and available. In the meantime, keep an eye out for a program evaluation. And if you would like a continuing education certificate for attending this program, I will send instructions out on how to request one. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, thank you.
Bye, everybody.